Hey Reddit, what's the strangest coincidence you've ever personally experienced? Welcome back to the internet. We've got a very interesting topic for today. You know, coincidences are something that I find really fascinating. I'm a huge nerd for statistics and probability type things, so whenever it comes to things that seem incredibly unlikely, I like to try and, calculate exactly what the chances of them happening are. And while a lot of coincidences can seem impossible, the fact is that there are basically an infinite amount of coincidences that could possibly happen at any time, so it's not quite as impossible as you might expect. But let's get into the stories people have to share. So my old work ran a Secret Santa once, the week before Christmas. It was a $10 limit, and the person I was buying for I didn't know very well. I left my buying to the last minute because I just didn't know what to get her. So I was in town and walking past some shops when, lo and behold, I see an old copy of Oliver Twist in the window of a second-hand bookstore. It just called to me, so I went and picked it up. I checked the first page for the cost, and guess what? $10. Perfect. So come the day of the Secret Santa, we're all opening our gifts, some 150 people. Out of the corner of my eye, I see some people crowding around a woman who is crying. I keep listening, and people are calling out for the person who was her Santa. I go over and reveal that it was me. The lady I'd bought it for was crying and hugged me. She said 10 years ago her house burned down, along with all of her possessions. The book that I bought her was her favorite, and also the exact same edition, so had the exact same cover she remembered. Because it was a secondhand bookstore, it was even weathered in the same places she remembered. So it was as if I'd grabbed the book off her shelf before the fire and delivered it to her 10 years later. Well, I guess you can feel a little better about last-minute shopping for that gift. I used to get 2 buses home from work. I got off the first one, having left my phone and keys in the front seat of the bus without realizing. I got on the second bus, went to my favored front seat, and my possessions that I didn't know were missing were waiting for me. The bus had changed driver and route. Still freaks my nut out to this day. I've never really ridden the bus much, but I've ridden like a train transit system. Honestly, the way I see it is if you leave something on the seat, you're never seeing it again. Like, how do you even track that down? Nobody believes me when I tell this story, but one day my husband and I ran into the same couple at 3 different places in 2 different states. So my husband and I had an errand to run out of state. We leave early and stop to get some breakfast. The couple was sitting across from us. The lady had on a funky shirt, which is why she stuck out of my mind. After breakfast, we drove to the next state over, to the office we had an appointment at. We were waiting in the lobby, and the couple from the breakfast joint walks in. Weird. So we spend the day finishing up our errands, and then we drive back home. I didn't feel like cooking, so we stopped to get some dinner at the pub. We sit down at the table, and guess who's already eating at the table behind us? The same friggin' couple. Hey, yeah, I had something similar to that happen to me, too. This FBI truck was sitting outside my house, and then I went to run some errands, and then when I came out of the store, that same FBI truck was outside of the store. And then I went and stopped over to a friend's house, and I came out and the truck was over there, too. I mean, who could even predict this kind of thing? I wish I could leave it at that, but I know some people will take it seriously, so it was a joke. So I was sitting in a restaurant about 200 miles from where I live, telling my mother, who was visiting from a different country, about a trip I had to another country, about 6,000 miles away, with a work colleague, and the lady at the table next to us leans over and says, "I think you're talking about my son." Turns out I was sitting next to my colleague's parents while showing my mom pictures of our trip. You know, most of these stories of these crazy coincidences involve running into somebody far away from home. Either that or running into somebody that you had significance with a long time ago. So it's like you're either far away in distance or far away in time and happen to meet up at that exact point. But either way, it's pretty awesome when you happen to be in just the right place at the right time. So in grade 10 English class, the teacher didn't have anything planned for us to do, and it was close to the end of the year, I guess. So she goes to the big cupboard in the corner and pulls out a stack of copies. It's examples of successful essays written during a final exam, so we can learn what a good one looks like and how to build a narrative, etc. The topic of these was, what was the most pivotal moment of your life? There's 3 examples, ranging in proficiency. We read the first 2, and I volunteered to read the last one aloud. I started reading and stopped. The essay was about me. My big sister had gotten a really good mark 6 years earlier on her final exam essay, which she wrote about the day I was born. I got pretty emotional about that one. And then you come to find that you're the chosen one and everybody around you knew it the whole time. I worked half a day, drove 6 hours from Southern California to Northern California for car camping with my wife. I chose an obscure campground which was neatly deserted. It was off-season. I picked the most deserted and remote campsite location. We planned on rocking the tent. We were bummed after setting camp, and another couple selects the site right next to us. Turns out to be a coworker I'd spoken with earlier that day. I hadn't told the coworker anything about plans. We weren't close. Earlier that day we spoke briefly of work-related issues. Man, don't you hate it when you're just trying to be alone and everybody's just stalking you unintentionally? So my wife and I were in Tucson visiting my mother, who just moved there. My wife decided she wanted a tamale. We drove around for 2 hours, shopping in restaurants, looking for tamales. Couldn't find one. Went back to my mother's apartment. Literally 2 minutes later, somebody knocked on the door of my mother's apartment, asking us if anyone wanted to buy any tamales. Maybe that's why you couldn't find any anywhere. This door-to-door salesman already bought them all. Honestly, maybe he works for the Google algorithm because, you ever notice that you start seeing ads for things that you were just talking about? They're always listening. So one year, I got a roommate through Craigslist. The guy was weird for sure, but good-natured and paid rent. Is this my roommate's post? Anyway, after about 2 months of living with him, my cousin comes over to hang. I introduced the two, and my cousin, in the most chill voice ever, said, "Nah man, we know each other." Turns out they were college roommates 5 years earlier in another state. Oh yeah, never mind, that wasn't me. Yeah, it's really weird when you meet two people from completely different places and they happen to know each other. I remember back in high school, I had like a theater class where I made friends with this one guy, and then I had this engineering class where I made friends with this other guy, and I was just friends with both of them for a long time and didn't realize that they were actually brothers. So it was pretty convenient when I would go hang over at their house. So not me, but a pretty interesting story in my family. Two of my great-grandfathers got imprisoned in the same jail, and served time together. My great-grandfather on my mother's side was an architect, and even drew my other great-grandfather's house. Yeah, it always seems weird when people sort of just like inadvertently send a message way off into the distant future. Like those two guys probably had no idea they were going to be distantly related one day, but sometimes the world is weird that way. So my sister, Emily, was on a ski lift in New Mexico when some younger girl across from her asked if her name was Emily. Apparently the stranger, who kind of looked similar but underage, had found her lost ID the year prior and had been using it for a year to buy alcohol. So after this story blew up, I texted my sister, who reminded me it was weirder. She was later hiking with friends for 17 hours. They got tired, thumbed for a hitchhike, and got picked up by this girl's twin. Man, I guess just everybody looks alike around this city. I met a Canadian guy while on a holiday in South America, and we ended up going sightseeing together. At the end of the day, a person behind us tapped him on the shoulder and asked if the scar behind his ear was from cancer surgery. They got talking. Turns out they were from the same small town in Canada, had the same type of brain cancer, and had been operated on by the same surgeon. Wow, talk about having a lot in common with someone you just met. Like I was saying at the beginning, I like to come up with the actual probability percentages of stuff like this happening. I mean, how many times does that one surgeon perform that operation? Like, probably less than 100, and even if you say 100 times out of the course of everyone in the world, that's still like a 1 in 70 million chance of actually running into somebody like that. So I was at the dentist getting a crown extension. The dentist says, "Hey, you were born on July 13th, so was I." The assistant says, "Me too." We all shared a look of surprise and longing with each other, longing to be closer. Then they drilled the absolute F out of my teeth. Yeah, the whole birthday thing is interesting, because, like, every day is somebody's birthday. Like, even today, happy birthday to the probably few hundred people that are watching this. Because, like, if I got 10,000 views on a video, which this one probably won't, but there's probably at least 30 people watching that it's their birthday while watching it. So here's something interesting I think about sometimes. If you grab two people at random, there's about a 0.27% chance that they have the same birthday. But there's about a 0.00007% chance that they both have your birthday. I don't know, I like birthday statistics because they're one of the easier ones to actually figure out. So I have an uncommon last name and a not too common first name. I was in the hospital for a surgery, and the person in the next room was there for the same surgery. Come to find out that we were second cousins and never even knew the other existed. He had the same name as me, and his wife had the same wife as me. He had the same name as me, and his wife had the same name as my wife. Yeah, that makes a little more sense. Well, I mean, maybe your health condition is genetic, so that's why you're getting the same surgery. Maybe your wife's name is genetic, so, I don't know. So back in the early to mid-90s, the phone system changed, and you no longer needed to dial the area code for a long-distance in-state call. We're a small state with only one area code. So one morning, I woke up to the phone ringing, and when I picked up, I recognized the voice on the other end as belonging to my old boss from a few years ago. She had an unmistakable voice. We had a nice conversation for a bit before she realized she had dialed the wrong number. I lived in a different town in a different part of the state, but the number must have been off by only one digit from the one she'd tried to call. To add to the coincidence, I had overslept and would have been late for work if she hadn't called me and woken me up. Yeah, it's not too often you come across a wrong number ending up being somebody you know type of coincidence. Because for a 7-digit phone number, there's technically about 10 million different phone number possibilities. So I started dating this girl a few weeks ago. We get to talking about where we live, etc. She lives in not only the same building, but exact same apartment I lived in 2 years ago. It was so freaking bizarre walking into my old apartment that I never thought I would see again. What are the odds? Yeah, I've come really close to coincidences like that. One time I found out that a coworker of mine actually used to clean houses, and she cleaned a house that was actually right next door to one that I used to live in. But unfortunately, I've never had the stars align in that way quite yet. The person who sits next to me at work copies everything I do, except she has no way of knowing. I wear a blue sweater, she wears a blue sweater. I bring leftover spaghetti, she brings leftover spaghetti. It's so weird, I almost hate her. You should start trying to put that to the test of throwing some real curveballs at her. I just imagine this person going into work like wearing some kind of tie-dye tank top or something, and then seeing their coworker and being like, "Aha! I beat you, you didn't copy me this time." So when I was 18, I lived in a town a very long ways away from where I ended up moving. I struck up a friendship with this guy from work in that town. We play Halo, watch movies, etc., and he was awesome. I ended up moving suddenly due to a family emergency, and I never got his contact information. I didn't even remember his name a decade later, but I thought of him often as he was an awesome guy through all the years. 11 years later, I'm working at my job, carpooling with someone from my training class, and one night he asks if I mind his roommate being in the car, as he was going to take the car after we got off work and use it for the night. He introduces us, I turn around, and in the back seat is the guy from the town a very long ways away. We reconnect immediately, and now live together. He's my best friend for sure, and the godfather to my children. See, what was I just saying about having weird mutual friend connections? When I was a kid, about 13, I played a lot of a video game called Diablo 2. I started a clan with a few people I'd met on the internet, and we played every day. At some point, we were helping some random person, and he asked to join. We thought he was nice enough, so we let him in. As part of this clan, we also had a shared account we used to store in-game items for each other. After about a month of playing, this new guy goes in and changes the password, steals the account, and defriends everyone. Completely disappears off the map with all of our stuff. Fast forward a year later, and my family moves to Texas, and it's my first day at school. I'm sitting in algebra class, talking to the person in the seat next to me, and he mentions he plays Diablo. I said me too, and that I ran a clan and everything. I asked his username, and it was him. 2,000 miles away from where I first virtually met this guy, he's sitting next to me in math class. When I told him mine, his face went into total shock, and he didn't know how to respond. It was awkward for sure. Ended up telling him I didn't care and was over it, but let's just say we didn't end up becoming friends. Man, that's some pretty top-tier internet stalking, I'm impressed. I went to college, met a cute girl. "Where'd you go to high school?" she asks. You've never heard of it," I reply. I grew up in a town of 1,200 people. Graduated in a class of about 90. "Try me," she says. And that was the beginning of finding out that not only had she heard of it, she had almost attended it because her family had lived in one of the neighboring towns very briefly when she was growing up. We shared dozens of mutual friends and had apparently spent our young lives narrowly missing each other. Later, after we started dating, we learned that one of our mutual friends had been trying to set us up with each other for years. She was overwhelmed with laughter when she saw that we were finally together, completely without her involvement. I asked her to marry me, she said yes, we went out to dinner with our parents so they could finally meet. Her folks arrive at a restaurant and see mine. Her mom goes, "Oh hey," my dad's name. "So this is your son, huh?" They had been coworkers years ago. Of course. We've been married for 11 years now. Got a good thing going. We intend to keep it. Well, yeah, I would hope you'd get married after all that. Fate obviously wants you guys to be together. But it's kind of an interesting thought to have. Like, in my position, I have no idea who I'm going to marry. I probably have not met the person that I'm going to marry yet. But what if the person that I am going to marry, I've already seen before, just out in public, without even knowing it? You know, just a weird thing to think about. When I was a kid, while hiking with my dad, I was babbling and said, "The teacher told us if you speak too much, a fly will get in your mouth." In the exact moment, a fly flew into my mouth. Yeah, I don't really know how to calculate the percentage chance of something like this. So my friend in high school had the same exact locker combination as me in a school of 1,200 people. I saw a combo written on a piece of paper of his, and I asked why he wrote down my combo. He looked confused and said that's his combo. The combination locks are changed and reassigned each year. You should have asked all your other friends, maybe everybody had the same combination. When I was 18, I dated a girl who went to a private school. She told me they were having a dance, so I thought, okay, great, it'll be a nice night. She told me that only boys from a specific boys' private school were allowed to come, because of an incident once where they let everyone in. Some girl got really drunk and puked on the headmaster's shoes, so they limited it to one boys' school after that. Fast forward 12 years and I'm with my fiancée, a different girl, at a wedding shower. I overhear my wife say, "I was so embarrassed when I puked on the headmaster's shoes." I yelled, "That was you? That's awesome. I love you even more now that you're famous." So TLDR, my wife cockblocked me 12 years before we met. Hey, she was just planning ahead, okay? She just wanted to send you a message in the future. In freshman physics, I became friends with this Japanese kid next to me. After a while, he was helping me with my Japanese homework. I did really well after that, by the way. But after that class, we kinda drifted apart. Fast forward 2 years where I'm an exchange student in Japan over the summer and doing some sightseeing in Kyoto after the program. I'm crossing the street in Kyoto and I hear my name being called out. I look around and there he is. 1,000 miles apart, we meet again. We got some drinks and good food together. It was a blast. And no, his hometown was not Kyoto. He was also doing sightseeing while home for the summer. I think it's gotta be one of the weirdest things to be out on vacation and hear somebody call your name. Because when you're on vacation, you're kind of like stuck in the mindset of, well, I don't know anybody here, I'm just a complete stranger and I probably won't talk to anyone I know. So it's pretty much disorientating when something like that happens. But that's the last story, it looks like. So I actually just remembered one of the biggest coincidence stories I've ever had. So I mentioned before that I go to this convention every year called BlizzCon. It's just a gaming convention down in Anaheim, California. So I went to this like big office party at this big job I had been working at for a while. And I was talking around to some people. You know, I mean, I was the young guy. Most everyone at this office was a bunch of old guys. Just telling them, yeah, I'm going to this thing called BlizzCon. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's like a fan convention. And one of the old guys there, he's just like, huh, I've heard of BlizzCon. My daughter goes to that. She's in the costume contest. Maybe you'll run into her. And I'm just like, yeah, whatever. Like not thinking much of it, because I'm like, yeah, there's going to be like 30,000 people there, and I don't know her name or what she looks like or anything like that, so I mean, you know, I'm not getting my hopes up. But anyways, I go to the convention, I have a great time. It's like a 2-day long event, and I just spend lots of time having fun. And after the second day, you know, the convention's all over. It's probably like midnight, and I'm just hanging out outside the convention center. I just decide to sit down and talk to some people. I'm in this group of like maybe 5 or 6 people, and we're just hanging out chatting for hours. And I noticed there's this couple in the group, and I heard them mention where they were from, and they were also talking a lot about like cosplay and stuff. So after like 2 hours of talking to these people that I just met, I go to the lady and I'm just like, is your dad so-and-so? And she just gives me this horrified look. She's like, how do you know my dad? So yeah, 700 miles away, I just happened to meet the friends that I didn't know I was going to end up meeting. And yeah, we've been friends ever since then. They're actually like cosplay professionals at this point, so. But that does it for this video. It's probably a lot longer than my usual AskReddit videos because I rambled a lot, but hopefully you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. And she's in the ceiling now. Hey, you're in the ceiling.